Hey, it's Sandra Pike from Lepage Atlantic and the Pike Group. Well, today's topic is really hot. So I was looking at the stats on Thursday, and we were talking about the average over asking. So in 2021, the average over asking in all of HRM was $57,000. So for January, the average over asking was $76,000. Now, mind you, every different area of town will have different values for when it goes over asking. Some places it could be 100. There's some pockets, for example, in Dartmouth that are only 13. I looked at one yesterday. I think the average was 87. So it depends. However, there are outliers that happen. And this one in particular just took my breath away. The property was listed on the market for a year, and it expired and came back on again. It was listed at 3.6 million, and you will never believe what it sold for. And I think it must be the highest in Halifax so far. It sold $700,000 over asking, which is crazy. Like, that's California prices, Toronto prices. That's not here typically in our, no, that's not even typical. It doesn't happen in our market. Today, we're going to talk about how buyers are feeling when we're working with them, just to get some sense, because my thoughts are you're not alone. So anyway, I will get Christine to introduce herself first, and then we'll get right into the thick of things.
Yeah, so I'm Christine Kennedy. I am with Remax Nova. I've been licensed for 4.5 years.
Jim.
Awesome. Jim Pomeroy with Coldwell Banker, Super City Realty, just under 2 years.
Ah, there you go. How you liking it so far?
Oh, if I were any better, it'd be illegal.
And my old buddy, Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, Richard Payne here from Halifax Homes and Lifestyles, EXP Realty, and we are 10 years. So we're now double digits.
You know what? I'm 11. I'll be 12 this year.
There you go. You're looking good for 12.
Oh, thanks. Nothing that filters can't fix. So Christine, let's talk about you're out in the thick of things. You're in the weeds, and you're having your buyer. What conversations are you having with your buyer now when you're out on the street?
Honestly, the majority of conversations are to just stay positive, to keep going. A lot of people are feeling very defeated because it seems every time a house is listed, it's just going for so much more. And each sale is so much more than the one before that was so similar. So they're just getting very defeated. So to keep going, don't stop looking, go through every avenue of looking, and just be ready to pull the trigger.
Yeah. Now, Jim, would you say your clients are of the same mentality? They're very defeated?
I think it's definitely like a wide range of emotions is the best way to kind of put it. When you're in the thick of things, it's all depending on what the urgency is. So if somebody's really urgent, needs to move, needs to get here, then it can be really fast, and you need to move as quickly as possible, get those offers in, know when they're offering, and have a great game plan on that. Others that have a little bit more time, then you can have that conversation of saying, be patient, more houses come on market. You know, there is a house for everyone. So you just stay with it and keep that positivity, like Christine was saying.
Mm-hmm. Now, Richard, would your have you been involved in any deals since January that you would have written on and that you and your buyer didn't win?
Yes.
So how far were you off the mark when you went back to see what the house sold for?
We've been relatively close. I think the most away I've been has been about 35,000. That was the most away. We've been like bridesmaid, as we call it, second place quite a few times. And even then you ask the agent, well, what could we have done different? And it's always the same. It's like your terms are good, your conditions are good. It's always down to the price. And it's just somebody else decided to pay that a little bit more.
So you're saying that you're $35,000 off. So are you going in what the average is of over asking in Metro? Or are you going in, at $100,000 and you're 35 grand off?
Yeah, exactly. So the last one we did was, I think we were about 127 over asking, and we lost by, I think we lost that one by 20. So somebody went nearly 150 over.
And how far would be the highest, Christine, that you've gone over now?
Highest over asking would be probably 165.
Yeah,
We
wow.
still lost because it went 200 over asking.
So I was in, this would have been a couple of weeks ago. It would have been in Long Lake, the new subdivision just off Dumbrack. So those homes would have been around, I don't know, maybe 400 back in the day when they purchased them a few years ago. And there was one that was listed for 639. I looked at the comp, and the last one that sold was in December, and it sold for 729. So I looked to my client and I'm like, 749 should win it. I mean, we're $20,000 more than the last house that sold. We are, we're still well over $100,000 for the asking price. And I submitted my offer, and then, the agent gets back to us, said, okay, you're competing with so many, and do you want to leave your offer the same? And then, so we wrote at 815, $166,000 over asking price. And I mean, and I said to my client, I said, you know what, like, we need to get this back to tomorrow. You need to make a decision if you want to go forward or not at $166,000 over asking. And she called me 7:30 the next morning. She goes, we're good to go. And, let's submit the offer. And fortunately we won. What would you say, Jim, this year that you've been working with your clients, the highest you went over, and what did you lose at?
Okay. Well, it's been all over the map. It's really about percentages, right? When you kind of look at what you're looking at, because some can go a lot higher than others, but I've been close to the 200 mark on winning. But then losing, we've lost out by somebody went 250 or above in one. So it really is kind of a wide range. But I think it's that importance of what you're saying is looking at those recent solds, not necessarily looking at the listing price, because they're kind of maybe misleading in some aspects, but also can be, based on different sales and haven't caught up to what our current market is with less than 200 on and how competitive it truly is.
Mm-hmm. But Richard, what do you think of that property? So when it relisted the second time, so 357 days on the market, in the beginning, came back on 50. So it listed in October, didn't get an offer till December. How did it get to that point that it's $700,000 over asking? Like, why?
You, me, and everybody else is, apart from the buying agent and the listing agent, are probably asking the same question. And I think we all had a quick look at this one, and we know that there's definitely 4 parcel identifiers, so potentially 4 pieces of land. How did it go over asking? Because all 4 of us think that there was not necessarily multiple offers on this, so it was just one offer. Most of us in today's market will be, well, if it's just me, one offer, and you want this much money, I'll give you this much money. I'm not necessarily going to say, well, I really want it, so I'm going to, with no competition, offer over asking. So I think it comes down to, it was a huge house. I mean, we're talking something like 8,500 square feet. Plus, obviously, you've got ocean front on it, and there was separate land. So the only thing I can think is that somebody said, well, look, if you really want this and you want the land, potentially you could subdivide that land, put another house on it, sell that house, make another million, maybe $1.5 million on the house. That could be the only thing that I would look at, that if it was me and any of my clients were looking, that's the only reason I would have offered more money, is because, well, I want all the pieces of land. And maybe the sellers were thinking, well, we'll sell just the house and we'll keep the land and we'll do something different. So that's the only reason that makes sense.
So I've seen in this market, when a seller didn't get competitive offers that they were hoping to get, and they get an offer that they're not happy with, they end up countering back because that was the real price that they wanted in the beginning. Right. Do you think this may have been the case? Because it was listed at 4.6 at one point in time.
It's possible. I still think that, I've always talked to a lot of my people that are selling to say, look, if you're going to list your house at, what was it, $3.6 million, and somebody comes to you with an offer of $3.6 million, you said by listing that property at that number, you'd be okay with that. Now, in this market, yes, but 3.6 million in our market is a huge number. Big house, I agree. Oceanfront, I agree. But 3.6 million is a huge house, is a huge number in this market.
Yes.
You listed your house at 3.6 million. Someone comes to you with a 3.6 million number. As a seller, you should be going, I got what I wanted. I'm happy. Whether they did say, well, actually, I want my initial number from like 2 years ago, I really wanted. Maybe they went back and actually did that. But I guess it's one of those situations that we need to get hold of the listing agents and see if they could tell us what they actually did. But I don't think they'll tell us.
No, I don't think so either.
No.
Christine, you've been working with your buyer clients. Now, are you just working with people here locally, or are you working with people who are, the CFA, say in Ontario or BC?
Tons of people from Ontario. So
Okay.
many. Yeah, and they're all looking all over the province. But I find too, a lot of them are kind of running into the same struggles. It's not, everybody selling in Ontario and Vancouver don't have a bunch of money. And I feel like that's a huge assumption that people have. So
would it be a fair statement to say, because I know what was in my head when I moved from Ottawa to here, that they think that our market is way less inexpensive than theirs, and they want to come down and buy cash, which is great.
Yeah.
But they, if they're selling their home for, I don't know, $1 million in, I don't know, let's say Scarborough or Oakville or whatever, and they want to come here, and what price points are they starting at, do you find when you're working with them?
There is some people that start and like they're maxed at 250. There's some people that go up to $1 million buying here. But I find they're more so below 500,000, because the whole intention of coming here and uprooting your family from where you're living, from your home, and making that decision to move here. It's a very big decision, and they do it not wanting to mortgage, not wanting to have debt. So they want to buy it in cash. So they're limited to what they can actually afford.
Yeah, you might get a place in Glace Bay, but you're not getting anything substantial. That's here within 30 minutes of, or even 40 minutes of city center. Like, I don't even know if you can get a $300,000 single family home in Sackville now. Like, I don't think you can.
No.
Semi-detached in Timberley just sold for $585,000.
Yes, and they were built in what, 2004? I think, yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And are you getting any international clients, Jim, at all?
I had a few, but mostly for me, it's within Canada. So it's across province or in province as well.
Now, would they, let's say, are you working with anybody in BC, for example, or even Alberta?
BC, yes. Alberta, not at the moment. Ontario, I've worked with primarily. I'm from Ontario, so as well. So and kind of lived through it 11 years ago when it started kind of going up exponentially and going through that, what we're going through today, where you kind of sit there and your eyes are wide and you're going, what has just happened? Have we hit a new record? We've hit a new, oh my gosh, another surprise. And you're kind of seeing that. And now when you look back, and I talk to people from Ontario and a lot of friends and colleagues, what the numbers are today are even higher than what they were that 11 years ago. So it seems to have sustained itself there. And where are we in a new norm? Are we in a bubble, or what are the questions there? It's going to be very interesting how it plays out.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say, Richard? Do you think this is the new norm?
Yeah, definitely. Like we've been watching this. Like I'm the stats geek because of the accounting background. So I've been doing this for 9 years, and you can go back, and I'm a geek, so I'll keep all the spreadsheets, and you can track all of the numbers. But the increase that we've seen, a lot of people are saying, yeah, but this is where you should have been maybe 3-4 years ago. You just got there really quickly. So instead of doing a nice gradual climb, you did the hockey stick effect. And that's, I think, why everybody's kind of going, okay, is this a bubble? Because whenever you see a hockey stick effect coming upwards, that's when people start going, you've climbed so fast, so quickly. But as we all know, everything to do with what price a house will sell for is a willing seller and a willing buyer agree a price. And so long as you've got buyers and sellers agreeing prices, and this is our new norm, 575, 615 average price in HRM, this is where we're going to be. And it's going to stay that way. I mean, just from the amount of influx of people we've got, as well as Nova Scotians trying to buy now as well. Good news is we're seeing a little bit more listing coming on the market, but realistically, everything is kind of hitting that number where you're like, yeah, the prices are going to stay where they're at. Maybe it's going to decrease a little bit, but I can't see it. Not from what we've got with the people coming here.
Do you remember, Richard, we would have did, one of these talks last spring. And,
Yeah.
I did not think we were going to be, here again. But last year was different because, again, they came here because of our numbers were good for COVID. We had 2 years of the military move. And, but so we're only going to see maybe, just the 1 year of military come here. But it's going to be the immigration. I never thought it would be this challenging, for everybody involved, like sellers, buyers, and even us. I didn't think that 2022 would be that way, or if it would even continue.
Yeah, because we were talking about it kind of plateauing in around about the fall. That my big prediction was, we'll see the increase, but we're going to level off a bit in the fall. Yeah, no,
that's
completely wrong.
same thing.
Yeah.
And then remember, we had Thomas, right? Remember Thomas on that? And I don't know, I didn't see this. So, Christine, if you had to give, you're working with your buyer, they're not going high enough to win the listing. What advice are you giving them? And how many times are they going to write offers before they would see, yeah, okay, I get it?
I actually very recently went through that and just had to sit them down and have the tough conversation. Most people have a time frame that they do have to make that move by. So it's really sitting down and having the hard conversation of what decision you have to make to get where you need to be when you need to be there. Just saying, these are the way that things have been going. It doesn't look like they're stopping. Every time that there is a new property that's similar that has sold, you're just slowly getting pushed out and priced out of what you can afford. And what you started out wanting has already changed, and you're getting less than what you started wanting that you could have afforded. But unfortunately, because you were nervous to put that offer in, because whether you felt it was overpriced or whatever it may be, you lost out, and now you end up with significantly less in such a short period of time. So it's just, you got to trust and you got to do it.
Yep. And, that you talk about, you have to make the plunge because the benchmark keeps changing. Jim, do you think that if the mortgage rates go up, do you think that will affect our market here? Do you still think that we will have the amount of competitiveness when it comes to writing offers?
Yeah, well, I think the big word is inventory. We really have to see some inventory kind of come back on market under 200. I don't know what it is today. I didn't look, but it's still, we have tons of buyers. We're the fastest growing. If we talk about Halifax, we're the fastest growing municipality, I think, in Canada, maybe slowly behind one other, but that's going to be the big telltale sign. And then I do think once interest rates do increase, that will be a stress test for everyone who's owning right now, who has a mortgage, and whether or not they can afford certain prices. And we might see a plateau, we might see a dip, or we might see it continue if we still don't have the inventory.
What do you think, Richard? Do you think we'll see a dip?
I think we're going to see the flat line. Like, we're looking at a $615,000 average price point in January. February is Monday, so not that many days away. And I have a feeling, it's just from some of the offers we've been putting in, it's going to be more than 615 as an average. And we're going to see close to, I'm thinking like 85, 90 as an average over asking price as well. So I think everything we're looking at, like Jim says, the stress test is going to be an interesting one to see, because we're already stress testing mortgages at 5.25, regardless of what mortgage rate you're going to get. So in theory, that stress test is already being applied. You can up the interest rates by another 1/4 of a point in April, but I'm still qualifying at 5.25 and I'm getting mortgage rates of 2.2. So we've still got a fairly big gap. So I think those interest rates are going to have to increase quite a lot before people say, okay, I can't actually afford these anymore. So my hope is always that we're just not rapidly going up, because if we start hitting like 700,000 inside HRM average price point, that's pricey. Like, I mean, me and Sandra have been around a while, so we know what it felt like in the good old days when average prices were 300 inside HRM.
I remember when we started, it was 232,000 was the average asking. So that would have been back in 2010 to 2011. Yeah. And only in 2017, it was only like 300 and change. Not
we
even.
were still 300s, yeah.
Yeah, that's when I started.
Yeah, and now here we are 5 years later, and we've doubled that number.
Yeah. And if you don't get in the market, I think it's that conversation, Richard, you and I would have spoken about this before. It's the conversation with the buyer is that you are not checking all the boxes for the house that you want now. I think it's get into a house and, get into a marketable house that, you can do a resale after and start getting equity. Because if not, so my buyer, when we had that conversation about that house, if she didn't get into the market now at 815 that we bought that property for, that same house, could be 915 next month. Like, you don't know, right?
Yeah. And I think it's the same advice for all the buyers is we know it's really, really hard on buyers right now. Like everybody's running around, and there was that little end of terraced house in Forest Hills that had 48 offers, Heidi Rhino. And you're like, it was 200 and something, 280, something like that. And I'm like, 48 offers. And we sent our offer in on that, and we were 200,000 over, and we didn't get it. And I'm like, it's just an end of terrace in Forest Hills, right next door to Cole Harbour Place. And you're like, yeah, it's just getting to the point where you kind of go 48 offers, and she, it's end of terrace. So it was a sensibly priced house, but that's what happens. Like, we're trying to just be sensible with listing prices, and we're just seeing the numbers just go through the roof with the number of offers and the prices that we're having to actually get people to pay to get their offers accepted. So that's the worry. And it's like Christine said, it's tough love. You need to sit down, like even now, brand new buyers that I'm working with, I'm having the tough love conversation on day one, minute one. I'm not waiting for like, oh, we missed out on one offer, we've missed on two. I'm like, no, we're having this tough conversation right now, because the more aggressive they are to start off with, fingers crossed, the quicker they'll actually get that house. And then you can like, great, you can stop stressing about the market now and just enjoy the house.
Yeah. But I know when I am prepping a buyer to go out like back in the day, okay, so we're going to write the offer and you're going to get home and you're going to be so stressed out that you wrote the offer. And this is at 97% of asking price. And now you're like, you're the numbers, what people are writing. I can't imagine what's going through a buyer's head when they're sitting at home like, holy crap, our offer just got accepted and it's like $150,000, $200,000 over asking. Have you had any clients, Christine, have buyer's remorse this year or even last year?
Oh yeah, lots and lots. It normally only takes one really good hurt for them to kind of go back on the right course of, okay, we really do need to step it up and put our best foot forward, because you only get one chance. Right. So if that's the host that you want, you need to put your best foot forward, and we can give you our best recommendation based on what we study and what we see in the market. That's all we have to go on. We can't, there's nothing else. So once you put that best foot forward with that recommendation and the knowledge behind it, you cross your fingers and hope for the best.
Jim, have you ever had a client that they wrote the offer, they got home, they're like, this is just, I have to get out of this offer. Like, I can't do this.
Yeah, I have. And, I think it's fair when you're in this and you got 15 minutes or you got 30 minutes to see a house when you go through the door. And then you're making a decision maybe in less than 24 hours if you didn't see the listing when it first came up. It can be a fast and furious decision to make. And then when you write it, you have a couple hours to actually sit and go, oh, okay, you know what, maybe this isn't the one. I do talk to a lot of buyers and talk about sleep at night. So it's if you get the house and you wake up in it and you can fall asleep and feel good about it, it's the right offer. And if you missed out by $1,000, you weren't willing to go higher. So you can sleep in your own bed at night and feel, we'll go get the next one.
And I'm going to ask the same question to you, Richard, but I'm going to do a bit of a spin on it. So let's say you would have had a buyer, their offer now is accepted, and they want to back out, or sorry, they back out at closing, or they back out, and now the seller is upset. So can you talk about if the recourse what a buyer would be faced with in the event that they didn't want to close?
Yeah, so the first thing is be careful with your conditions, because once you've got some conditions on an agreement and you go past that date, say you give yourself 5 business days to do inspection, financing, well and water, septic, you do everything. Once you go past those days, you've already committed a certain dollar amount of deposit. Now, we've got 2 ways of those deposits. A lot of agents are starting to say, well, when I remove my conditions, I'll give you the 20, 30, $10,000, whatever the number is. I'm still kind of playing it a bit old school, which is like, no, a couple of days after you accept my offer, that's when I'm going to give you my sign of good faith that we are putting money into this deal and we are going to get to the end. So once you've given that money and it's in the real estate trust account, you get towards closing day and all of a sudden you have that remorse and you're like, well, I'm going to walk away. Well, first thing that's going to go is that deposit. And the deposits that we're offering now are not small change. Like the whole ideas of like $1,000 to $2,000 deposits, yeah, they're long gone. Like I'm in the realm now where I'm talking to clients and I'm $20,000 to $40,000 deposits, like, because we've got to show that we're serious on that offer if we're going to win. So the risk to the buyer is, number one, you're going to kiss goodbye to that deposit. That's the first thing that's going to go. Number 2, your risk is how far does the seller want to push this recourse against you? Because they can actually start saying, well, let's engage a lawyer and let's talk about actually damages, because you had the property on the market, you took it off the market because it got sold, because it does go to sold, and now you're walking away from the deal. Well, the seller could go back and say, well, I'm going to sue the buyer for damages on the basis that I missed out on a market opportunity for the number of days that it was actually, in theory, sold for. Because we're talking about walking away on closing day.
Yes.
And that's the risk to the buyer is deposit, absolutely, kiss goodbye to that, that's gone. But number 2, it's like, well, they could lawyer up and they could start saying, well, actually, X number of days, I've got mortgage payments, I've lost interest on the property, and it's up to the seller's lawyer to say, okay, we're now going to small claims court, and yeah, you could be anywhere from $15,000 or above. The good thing with a seller is it depends how reasonable they feel. If they're walking away saying, okay, I lost 35 days on market, I've walked away with a $30,000 deposit. If the market's still crazy hot, I can put it back on the market and off we go again. But some sellers are going to say, no, I'll pay the lawyer retainer, which is not cheap, and I'm going to go for it. So that's the risk to the buyers is once you get rid of those conditions, you are really buying that house and you better get the keys.
Absolutely. And the seller can also sue the buyer that if they sold the house at $500,000 to this particular buyer, and now they can only sell it for $450,000, that $50,000 plus is certainly on the table. So it's buying a house with a limited time to assess what you want to do. You really have to know what you're doing. And we had one property that didn't close last month. Was a buyer divorce, couldn't get financing.
Ooh.
And so that was a build that we had that the buyer didn't qualify. So it's certainly buyer beware, and make sure you got all of your I's dotted and T's crossed. So
Yeah.
guys, thank you so much for joining me today. Like, this was great. Again, the elephant in the room is the $700,000 property that went over asking. Anyway, join us next week. We'll have a different panel and a whole new set of questions. Thank you.
Take care. See ya.
Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks.